Welcome back to the conversation. Now, switching gears to Liberia, where President George Weah is set to face challenger Joseph Boakai in a November 14th runoff vote, marking a significant moment in the country's electoral history. In the initial round of elections, Weah, a former international football star, secured 43.83% of the vote, while Joseph Boakai led a crowded field of challengers with 43.44%. This rematch comes after their 2017 face-off, which resulted in Weah winning 60% of the vote, marking Liberia's first democratic transfer of power since the end of the devastating civil wars between 1989 and 2003. Now, joining me for this discussion is Professor Adam Kyne, international human rights advocate. He joins us from the Liberian capital, Monrovia. A warm welcome to you, Professor Adam Kyne, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, Professor Kyne, what specific demographic, regional, or socioeconomic factors have contributed to the closely conducted presidential elections that has led to a runoff in Liberia, and how might these factors sway the outcome of the runoff coming up in November?
Well, at this critical moment, as we all with eager anticipation await the runoff, it is apparent that at this moment, most political parties are in the process of negotiating for other political parties to join them. So I think the major thing is not the socio-economic situation at the moment. I think the major thing at the moment is having other parties joining other parties or the major parties, so that we can have, so there can be some form of cohesion that will help to conduct an election where someone's going to win. Because as it had already been proven, both parties cannot win at the moment, so they need other political parties. So there is a critical negotiation going on at the moment. I think that's what we will highlight first before we talk about the socio-economical situation. I think we are anticipating what's going to happen.
Now, Professor Kyne, quite a lot of commentators and analysts have commended Liberians, ordinary Liberians, for the conduct following the presidential elections, and this is as a result of Liberia's checkered past when it comes to security and the civil wars it experienced in the past. Now, what has been the mood in the country since the presidential elections leading up to this moment, and what factors would you say is responsible for the peaceful conduct of the elections, and why and how did Liberia do it to keep everyone in line?
So what I would say is that I think Liberians are quite aware that we have had past experiences of violence or civil conflict that ruined the entire country. And so that peace pipe has been smoked and discussed daily, informing Liberians that we cannot return to that past. And not only that, but we have international communities that are around trying to make us accountable for the peace that we have maintained. And there are several other organizations, churches that are also preaching peace and nonviolence. So I think that is a trigger in the consciousness of every Liberian, knowing that we cannot return to the dark days and violence will not help us at the moment. So the democratic means should be the means by which we run these elections. So I think everybody is aware of the past. So the past will always be a reflection. The past have taught us lessons. So the past will always be reflected in these critical times as we anticipate eagerly the runoff in November.
Now, Professor Kyne, in your opening statement, you seem to suggest that the runoff will be determined by the socio-economic factors, as that seems to be priority among electorates in Liberia. President George Weah aimed to lift Liberia from a low-income to a middle-income country. Could you elaborate on the progress or challenges he faced in achieving this goal during his first term?
Well, the ruling party ran on a campaign slogan that talked about pro-poor leadership, where I think that will sagaciously suggest that they were talking about going down to those who are in poverty to help bring them up. But again, that could be a great impact. Great approach. However, the actualization of those that approach might be tough to forego and to implement because of the poverty in the country, and knowing that we are just from a civil war to just automatically, it would be a magic wine to have Liberia just change within 6 years or within 12 years. I think we have gone back, we're 25 to 100 years, and so. Ooh, Jesus. Yeah, so we've gone back almost 25 years or even 50 years backwards. So for someone or a political party or an individual to just come and say we're going to automatically change things in 6 years or in 12 years, that must be a miracle from God. And so it is true that we will come up with our good political platform, but the implementation is more essential. And I think it would take gradual process to have some of these things occur. It will also take mindset in Liberia because of the civil war and the lack of miseducation and lack of education in our country. We have almost 120 young people who are drug addicts in the street. The educational system very poor, and people are not engaging in becoming the better version of themselves. So I think it only just happened under the political leader. I think they can only do whatever they can do, and another government must come. But I think the major thing, in my estimate, is to make sure that corruption is eradicated, not eradicated, but alleviated to some point. Once we have corruption alleviated in Liberia, I think whatever we want to get done, we can get it done quicker. But with corruption being the major factor, it's just difficult to have some of these political ambition, political whatever we have to do, it cannot just be done in the base of corruption. So that's my argument.
Okay, now, Professor Kyne, let's talk about the main challenger to President Weah in this election, former Vice President under Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Joseph Boakai. What aspects of his leadership style and experience distinguish him from Weah and his approach to governing Liberia? How do their campaigns differ, and is there a major difference in their philosophies towards solving the problems of the Republic of Liberia?
So Joseph Boakai, the opposition, I think he's vying and also advocating that Ellen, in his estimate, that Ellen, his boss, squandered a lot of opportunity, and he sitting as a vice president was almost like a packed car. That is his political slogan, that he been packed and he have not been able to do anything as a vice president. So given the opportunity to serve as the president, then he have discovered, according to him, all of the loopholes and all of where he think that Ellen government should have done better and they didn't do well. So he's coming now to say he can do better. And he's also criticizing the current government that corruption is too high and leadership and what have you. So he's coming on that political platform in a sense of rescuing Liberia. That's their slogan, rescuer. They are coming to rescue Liberia. So that is the political difference between him and Weah. He has sat with his boss for 12 years, watching her as the president of the Republic of Liberia, and he was the vice president. So he was very quick to admit that she squandered a lot of opportunity, and he's here now to rescue Liberia so that those opportunities can be acquired. So that's, I think, there where the philosophical differences are.
Now, Professor Kyne, how have political parties and alliances evolved in Liberia since the general elections? Are we seeing any movement in this period that has passed between the general elections and the announcement of a runoff? And Are there any noteworthy shifts or realignments that could influence the current race?
All right. So again, it will be based upon the best negotiator between these two parties. So they are all negotiating to have other parties that at least have 2-3%, and those who have bigger weight and bigger name within the country to endorse their political party. So it's based upon who will negotiate very well. It will play a factor in raising the number to that 50% plus one. So whoever does a great negotiation and can get into the heart of the people to sell their political franchise or their platform, then if it resonates well with the people, then of course, then other people, those who voted for the other parties, would then obviously vote for their party. So right now we are in this critical stage of negotiation. So everyone is touching base with other political parties that are not participating in these runouts. So that's what's happening in Liberia at the moment. For the first time, one of the political party just endorsed the opposition. So it was glaring today. The statement is up on Facebook endorsing the opposition. And there are several other political parties. Some of them are neutral, and they are still anticipating who to endorse. I think they have to go into their meetings and meet with their supporters, and I think come up with a balanced support, and who is not just going to be based upon the leader, because there's a possibility the leader can endorse one political party and the people that voted for him endorse another. So it's just a slippery slope at the moment. But again, negotiation is very critical.
Interesting developments in Liberia, indeed. I'd like to bring in our second guest at this point. Jarp Rezinger Davies is a journalist. He joins us also from the Liberian capital, Liberia, from Monrovia. A warm welcome to you, Mr. Davies. Thanks for joining us on the conversation.
Much.
Hello, Mr. Davies. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. And
now let's talk. As Liberians inch towards this runoff elections, the first in its democratic history, could you provide an analysis of the pressing issues that Liberia is currently facing today, and how do the policy proposals of President Weah and former Vice President Boakai differ in addressing these challenges?
Okay, thank you very much. And like you asked, the pressing issues right now, people would talk about the economic issue of corruption, youth empowerment, and all of these things. Infrastructure development as a matter of fact. And this is what the incumbent president, President George Weah, is running on based on his developmental initiatives undertaken across the country, and his, quest to balance the Liberian economy. So these are things that he's running on. For the opposition, is also talking about the issue of corruption. The opposition is pushing that not much has been done with the issue of corruption. I don't know how much you know about what happened recently when 3 government officials were sanctioned by the Americans on corruption charges, and those, government officials were made to resign, but they have not been prosecuted. So these are things that people are looking at as some of the issues that the opposition is pushing for, that they are going to be very, very, keen on the issue of fighting corruption, because it has been an OH problem in Liberia, the fight against corruption. So that's what the opposition, even though the opposition too, like the former vice president is promising to get Liberians to work in the area of agriculture. He's one of those that is very, versed in that area. So he's also promising that he will get Liberians to work in the area of agriculture. So These are some of the policies the both parties are currently pushing as we edge towards the runoff election.
Okay, thank you, Yap. Still staying with you, Jap. How would you assess the performance of the electoral umpire, the Liberian National Electoral Commission, in the first round of the presidential elections? How was their conduct? Did ballots get to the polling units on time? And what's your assessment of the overall conduct of the National Electoral Commission of Liberia?
Well, as a matter of fact, the Election Commission has received pat on the back from almost all of the observing groups that witnessed the election. In some hard to reach areas, especially like one area in Riverside County, there was a little delay because of the road conditions. We have terrible road conditions in several parts of the country, especially in the rural area. But on the overall, the elections were, in fact, this is the first election that we had a record turnout because we had about 2.4 registered voters and we had 1.9 that attended the polls on the day of voting. So this is a record for elections in Liberia. And like I said, all of the observers, local, internationals, they have all, gave the election commission pat on the back for a job well done.
Now, are there any areas that might need improvement, as this was seen as a test? And, given the encouragement from international observers and also local observers on the ground following the general elections in Liberia, are there lessons and things that the National Electoral Commission can implement to even improve on its performance at the runoff elections in November?
Yeah, I think what needs to be done, because again, we had a very high number of invalid votes. That's something that's very, very concerning. And I think much needs to be done to make sure that all of those votes who could be a part of the decision-making process, whether to invalid votes, that's something I think the election commission will need to be keen on, talk to their staff at the various polling places to ensure that these people know, those who go into the ballot boxes know what they are doing. And another thing on election day that when we were covering the election, other complaints that came from the field was that, some elderly people were not catered to, because what we know is that elderly people with disability, baby mothers should be given preference once they go to vote. But we got some complaints, even though it was rectified later, but we got some complaints from the field on that. So I think also the election commission will also need to look in those areas to ensure that those people who should be given the preference are given the preference to cast their ballots.
Thank you very much, Jap. Now, finally, Professor Kyne, as we wrap up the conversation, I appreciate if you can, in less than 2 minutes. Given Liberia's history of civil conflict and political transitions, could you expound on the critical role this current elections play in determining the nation's future stability, development, and international relations?
Well, historically, I think this election is very historic because one, this is the first election that we have done that was not supervised by OMIL. Previous elections that were done had ECOMOS or some security, international security involved in it. But this is the first time that we have conducted our election without supervision of any international security network or security system. So I think this is critical. This is a microcosm, or it is a YA state that will govern other elections that will come in the future. And I'm 100% sure that whatever we have learned or we are going to learn in this election will be used to correct and make sure that the next election 6 years from now will be better than what we have at the moment. Like, for instance, I think as the journalist made mention of voter education, having 100,000+ invalid votes shows that there was not much education put into it, teaching the illiterate, the older people and people who don't read and write to understand the electoral process. So people went into those low booth and they were just zone out, don't know what to do, and they just did whatever they had to do. So those are some of the things. And I would strongly propose that I think this election teaches that we should also think about augmenting the laws of election, that it should not be done in a rainy season. I think Liberia is the only context that's conducting election during the rainy season. I think it should be done during the dry season so that people can be able to reach out into the other areas. So October 10th election, as constitutionally given, is not suitable because of rainy season. I think we need to put it in the dry season, and I think that will be what I would say for now. And pretty much.
In terms of logistical challenges, thank you so much, Professor Adam Kyne, international human rights advocate, and Jarp Rezinger Davies, journalist. Thank you both for joining the conversation. I do appreciate your contribution and your insight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this is where we wrap up on today's edition of The Conversation. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. See you next time. I am Gbenga Aborowa.